If you saw someone who had died, but they smiled at you, what would you do? Not scream. Not run. Just stand still. Look back. And suddenly realize, you were dead too. I don't remember exactly how far I went. I just remember that everything around me lost its shape. No more time. No direction. Just a space, a soft, floating light like mist and perfect, absolute silence. It wasn't the kind of silence that makes you uneasy. It was the kind of silence that lets you finally hear yourself. I drifted, or maybe more accurately, I dissolved. Like a single drop of water returning to the ocean. No more skin. No lungs. No heartbeat. But I still knew. Still felt. Still existed. And then I saw her. A figure stood in the light. She didn't walk toward me. She didn't speak. She just nodded and smiled. It wasn't the smile of a stranger. It wasn't even the smile of someone I knew. It was the smile of someone I once knew and somehow had forgotten. She didn't say a word. But I heard it, not with my ears, but with my soul. Welcome home, my child. I didn't know where I was. All I knew was, there was no more pain here. No more regret. No more guilt. No more I should have. Or if only, just a deep, immediate knowing, as if every question had already been answered before I even thought to ask. Have you ever felt that death doesn't come to take something from you, but to give something back? A memory. A piece of your true self. A final word you never got the chance to say. I was no longer a doctor. No longer a man who had just walked away from a 14-year marriage. No longer the little boy who lost his mother at 8. I was no one. And yet, I was everything. Every version of me was drifting somewhere in this space. I saw myself at 6 years old, crying alone in the storage room. I saw myself at 23, holding a patient as they took their last breath. I saw myself telling my wife, I'm fine, when inside, all I felt was emptiness, a barren desert. They were all here. No noise. No blame. Just quietly waiting for me to reach out and forgive. And then she, the woman who stood in the light, began to walk toward me. 1 step. 2 steps. She didn't touch the ground. She didn't stir the air. She placed her hand on my chest, right where the heart used to be. I no longer had a heart. But I heard it, the first beat since I had died. A heartbeat not from the body, but from memory. Mom? I whispered. She nodded. Not with her head, but with everything, the entire space around us. The whole field of light quivered gently like a breath drawn in deeply for the first time in a very long while. I wanted to say something, to apologize for forgetting her face, to say I was sorry for ever stopping believing, but I had no throat, and in this place, interruption didn't exist. She didn't say, I forgive you. She didn't say, I'm proud of you. She didn't say anything. She simply placed her hand over mine. And in that instant, I remembered everything I had once tried so hard to forget. I had lived without truly living. I loved but never said the words. I lost but never cried. I didn't die from poison. I died from silence. From the kind of silence no one ever stopped to hear. And now here, in a world where silence no longer exists, I can finally hear everything. But how did I, someone who never believed in souls, end up here? You wouldn't believe what led me to death, and why I never truly lived until after I died. There's a kind of person who never cries in front of others, not because they're strong, but because they've learned no one ever asks why the tears are there. I was that kind of person. My name is Caleb Thomas. I'm 43 years old, a former internal medicine resident, full-ride scholarship recipient, and once employed at one of the largest medical centers in Texas. Divorced. No kids. No pets. No retirement plan. And lately, no faith. I lost my mom when I was just 8. A stroke right there in the kitchen. I still remember the sound of the pan hitting the floor and my father's scream that followed, louder than anything I'd ever heard, until the day he died of cancer, 15 years later. We never talked about Mom. There were no pictures of her in the house. No one mentioned birthdays. No one spoke of the scent of orange cake she used to bake every Sunday. It was as if her death was some kind of glitch in the family system, and the best thing to do was just shut it off. So I learned to live as the one who handles things well. High grades. No trouble. Don't ask too many questions. Don't show too much emotion. Emotions meant weakness. Weakness meant failure. And failure meant to be unwanted. And more than anything, I was terrified of being left behind. Medicine taught me this. If the heart stops, perform CPR. If breathing fails, intubate. If there's pain, administer morphine. But What if you lost your mother at 8 years old? What if your father were so distant that you weren't sure he even remembered your middle name? What if there was a wound inside you that couldn't be seen on an MRI, couldn't be found in a blood test, and no medication could ever touch it? I didn't have answers. All I had was a busy life designed to keep me from thinking about it. I got married at 29. Her name was Renee, the head nurse in the ICU. We were like two soldiers on the same battlefield, sharing coffee, patching each other up after long shifts. But one day she said, "Caleb, being with you feels like living with a ghost. You're here, but you're not here. Do you ever feel anything? Or is everything just symptom descriptions?" I didn't know how to answer. I loved her, but I had never allowed myself to truly love. Because love meant loss. And loss, I was already too familiar with it. We divorced after 11 years. No tears. No arguments. Just a letter she left behind, saying she hoped I'd find a reason to become human again. I read it. Then I burned it. A year later, I filed for a 3-month unpaid leave. No explanation. No clear plan. I just knew one thing. I needed to disappear. I started a solo journey through South America, and eventually made my way into the Amazon, a place with no hospitals, no internet, and no one who knew my name. I wasn't looking for a spiritual awakening. I just wanted to stop existing as Caleb Thomas. On the 9th day in the jungle, I woke up to a dark red mark below my calf. A small snake. Purple. Silent. I must have slipped while crossing a damp trail, and didn't notice whatever had brushed against my leg. Just a few hours later, I could no longer feel my leg. My breathing turned shallow. My hands began to tremble. My vision blurred. My heart pounded, then began to slow. Like some invisible hand was turning down the dial on my life, one notch at a time. I collapsed onto the grass, my head resting against the base of a dry tree. No panique. No screaming. I had watched dozens of slow deaths unfold in the ICU. And now it was my turn. And I thought to myself, well, maybe this is it. Maybe it's time. But in that very moment, the moment I closed my eyes, I didn't see darkness. I saw light, and a woman, standing there, smiling, nodding, as if she had been waiting for me for a very long time. But you wouldn't believe what she showed me. Not heaven. Not hell. She showed me, in my worst versions, my loneliest, my most broken. And you know what? She embraced them all. When I opened my eyes in that formless realm, she was still there, standing exactly where I had first seen her. She didn't ask if I was in pain. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just looked at me with eyes that knew everything. When I was a child, my mother used to hold me whenever I had nightmares. She'd place her hand on my chest and whisper, "Your heart's still beating. That means you're still here." And now, she placed her hand on my chest once more. No heart beneath it. And yet I heard it again. Not a biological beat, but a spiritual one. I wanted to cry. But here, tears don't fall from tear ducts. They fall inward, each drop soaking into the soul. "How have you been living, my child?" The voice didn't come from her mouth. It rose like a wave inside my chest. I wanted to answer, but some part of me already knew she didn't need a reply. She had seen everything. And in that instant, the space around me shifted, turning into floating images, like scenes projected into the air. One moment, I'm standing in the hospital hallway, watching a patient take their final breath, unable to say a single comforting word. Another, Renee is crying one evening, and I sit in silence, wishing she'd stop so I could finally sleep. And then, a night when I was 13, cutting a photo of my mom to hide inside a math book, afraid my father might find it. "Is this me?" I asked. "This is the part of you you tried to hide," she said. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because they don't disappear. They're just waiting to be forgiven." I turned to look at her. "Forgiven by whom?" "By you," she answered. I let out a broken laugh, distorted, half-choked. "I've never killed anyone. I've never done anything terrible." She looked at me calm, unwavering. "But you've also never held yourself. Not once." In that moment, an 8-year-old boy appeared before me. Thin, messy hair. In his hands, a crumpled old photo, the face of the woman in it blurred by tears. He looked at me. "Have you seen my mom?" he asked. And I realized, that boy was me. The version of myself I had left it behind in a dusty corner of memory. I didn't say a word. I just knelt and held him. For the first time in my life, I embraced myself. The whole world burst into light, like sunrise breaking through everything at once. and my mother smiled the fullest smile I had ever seen. "Are you angry with me?" I asked. "Angry? No," she said. "I was waiting." "Waiting for what?" "Waiting for you to become human again." I collapsed into her chest like a child. No more logic. No more defenses. Just one simple truth. Everything I had ever searched for out there had been right here all along. She took my hand and led me forward. Not upward, but deeper, into a place no eye could ever see. A place where other souls were waiting for me. Not to judge, but to help me understand why I was still alive. But before I met her, I was almost no longer human. Do you know what killed me? Not the venom, but something far more silent, something you might be carrying right now without even knowing it. People often imagine death as a knock at the door, but for me, it came as a sound that never happened. No warning, no sign, no countdown clock, just one tiny moment, swallowed whole by my indifference. And then, I saw the darkness torn open by silver light. I fell, but it didn't hurt. I drifted, but never touched the ground. I didn't know who I was. No name, no gender, just the quiet certainty that I had just left something behind that had never truly been me. Then a voice from nowhere and everywhere spoke. "You didn't come here because of the venom. You came here because you died a long time ago and never realized it." In that moment, I saw myself standing beside my own body, head tilted back, eyes open, skin pale, and I thought, that's not me. But deep down, I knew the truth. That is me when there's nothing left inside worth holding on to. I didn't die because of the snake. I died because I had stopped wanting to live a long time ago. As I turned away, a burst of light rose in the distance like the sun shattering into 1,000 pieces. And from within that light, she emerged. The woman I had seen before. She nodded. She smiled. She said nothing. But I heard everything. That light, it wasn't heaven. It was an ocean of souls, where I met every version of myself I had once been abandoned. And it was also the place where I was asked one question that forever changed the way I see life. I used to think death was a blank space, but now I know, it's not a void. It's a clearing, a stillness, a space within. As the light enveloped me, it felt like I was falling into water. But not wet, not cold, just a liquid substance, soft, endless like mist, like ink spilled in slow motion, like moonlight melting. I didn't swim. I was carried, like a single drop in a rainstorm, no longer a name, but never more myself. I was drifting through something they call the ocean of souls. No floor, no shore, but there was a pulse like the heartbeat of the universe. And with each beat, I was drawn closer to everything I had spent a lifetime avoiding. I began to see people, not physical bodies, but echoes of emotion, souls without faces but carrying stories. A middle-aged man drifted past me, his body made of smoke, hands covering his face, repeating over and over, "I didn't get to say I'm sorry. I didn't get to say I'm sorry." A young girl floated in the dim mist, her wide, star-like eyes whispering, "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Another soul passed silently beside me, leaving behind a feeling so heavy, it felt like I was being pulled into a bottomless lake. He didn't speak, but I knew he chose not to go back. And now, he can't find the way anymore. I was afraid, not of death, but of the possibility that I had once been just like them. Then I heard a voice so close, it didn't come through my ears, but rose through my spine. "Caleb, it's time to remember." And I was pulled deeper downward, inward. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in a circular chamber. Light floated in the air without a source, without shadows. In the center of the room, a glowing circle, like a pool of memory. And in that pool, I saw everything I thought I had forgotten. I saw myself at 6 years old, standing outside the classroom, holding a lunchbox, and no one was inviting me to sit with them. I saw myself at 17, reading a scholarship rejection letter, a paperwork error I never told anyone about. I saw myself at 32, standing outside Renee's door, hearing her cry, but never knocking. No one blamed me. No one judged me. There was only one question, echoing through the entire room. If you could go back, what would you do differently? I didn't answer. I just cried. For the first time, I didn't try to explain. Didn't defend myself. Didn't shift the blame. I simply admitted. I was scared. Scared of being hurt. Scared of being rejected. Scared that if I truly lived, and then lost it all, I wouldn't survive the pain. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was my mother. She didn't say, "I forgive you." She simply said, This is the first time you've truly listened to your own heart. You see? It's still beating, even though you stopped listening to it a long time ago. A door appeared, not with a handle, just a glowing frame floating in the void. Go forward, I asked. No, she replied. Go back. Why? Because someone is still waiting to hear something from you, something you've never dared to say. I looked at my mother one last time, not to hold on, but to remember. I stepped into the light, and I fell again. Not downward, not upward, but inward, back into myself. And when I opened my eyes, I was no longer who I used to be. But the first thing I saw was the photo of my mother placed gently on the hospital table. Do you remember her eyes when I died? Now I understand why she smiled. I opened my eyes, and the first light I saw wasn't the light of the spirit world. It was the soft amber glow of a hospital lamp, shimmering like a dream from long ago. A white room, still and quiet except for the steady beeping of the heart monitor, counting each borrowed minute I had been given to live again. The first feeling wasn't, I'm alive. It was, I've come home. I turned my head to the right, and there, on the small wooden table beside my hospital bed, was a photograph. An old photo, faded, the edges curled. It was my mother, taken when I was 4. The photo I thought my father had thrown away after the funeral. The color of her eyes in that picture, it was the same gaze I saw in that other place. And that smile was the first smile that greeted me when I died. In that moment, I didn't cry. I simply closed my eyes and felt held. Not by anyone else, but by the part of me I had long forgotten. A soft knock at the door. A nurse stepped in. Her eyes were wide with surprise. You're awake? Yes. I think so. That's wonderful. You've been unconscious for 36 hours. 36 hours. To anyone else, just a day and a half. But to me, it was an entire lifetime. I stayed in the hospital for a few more days. I didn't talk much. I didn't share what I had seen, no one asked, and I wasn't ready. But there was one thing I did. I picked up a pen, and I wrote. I wrote this story. Every detail. Every feeling. Not to prove anything, but because I needed to hold on to a piece of that other world before it faded. A month later, I returned home. But I wasn't the same Caleb Thomas anymore. I no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. I was no longer afraid of silence. No longer running from love. I picked up the phone and called Renee, my ex-wife. Not to rekindle anything. Just to say, I'm sorry for not truly being there when you needed me. She was quiet for a long moment, and then she said, I know, but now, I can finally hear you. I started talking with my patients again, not just asking about blood pressure, but about the pain they carried in their hearts. I became a different kind of doctor. Not someone who lived only to heal the body, but someone who had learned to listen to the soul. And every night, before I fall asleep, I look at the photo of my mother on the bedside table. And I ask, is someone waiting for me on the other side? I've never heard an answer. But I always feel a quiet nod from deep within. And now, I ask you, the one listening to this story, if you could see the person you've lost one more time, what would you say to them? Write it down. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be explained. It just has to be real. Because sometimes, the only thing keeping our soul trapped between two worlds isn't guilt. It isn't pain. It's a single sentence left unsaid. Share in the comments below. If there's something you never got the chance to say to someone you've lost, write it down. Maybe just maybe they're still waiting to hear it, through you. And if this story touched something deep inside you, follow the channel. Because every week, we share journeys that few believe are real, but everyone longs to hear. Death doesn't end life. It simply begins a different kind of conversation, with someone you thought was long gone.